organizations that, this is mostly, the people say it's an offshore concept. No, but it's not an offshore concept. You can actually dumb it down. I work for an organization, I consult for an organization who have been able to dumb it down, not just using HAZOP as defining SCE, they came up with what we call the hazard and effect management process. So this process, again, similar, not too different from HAZOP. It's mostly in England, what we call the HSE case, but we have what we call the dummy down HSE case, which you can call, dummy down HSE case. So for this one, this is all about the ALAP concept, as low as reasonable practicable. This part can help you not only define what an SCE is, identify what an SCE is, but it will help you to further confirm that your plant is safe. And the reason why that will further help you to confirm is because there's a quantitative risk assessment part to it. Remember, HAZOP is qualitative. So you cannot use only qualitative to determine what an SCE is. You must also use the quantitative approach or the semi-quantitative, which comes to the LOPA. So for the HSE, the HEMP is defined as a structured methodology for the identification of HSE hazard and the assessment of the associated risk, the development of management system required in terms of barriers to reduce the risk to as low as reasonable practicable. Believe me, this is actually not too different from HAZOP, but HAZOP has its own limitation in identifying SCEs. It will identify the SCEs that are taken as credit in HAZOP, but it will not identify SCEs that are outside HAZOP. So I'm going to walk you through another process today, which is also called the risk management process through hazard and effect management process. Again, this is the same thing like HAZOP. You identify the risk. Are the people, asset, environment, are they safe? Are they exposed to harm from operations or activity? Yes. Okay. The next thing you want to do is that you assess the risk, checking for the likelihood of the cause, the severity of the consequence, or checking for the likelihood of the cause or the severity or the likelihood of the consequence. It depends on what your organization is doing. Once you find out that there's a high risk, because we are only dealing with high or major risk when it comes to an SCE, the next thing you want to find out is that the hierarchy of control, similar to occupational health and safety, can these risks be eliminated? If it cannot be eliminated, do you have the right controls? When I talk about controls, it's not just over instrumenting the plant. Do you have the right control? And are these controls effective? You can have controls, but are they effective? Yeah. Then the next one you want to do now is, can the potential consequence or the effect be mitigated? Do you have a recovery process? Are the recovery capable, suitable, and sufficient to make sure that people return back home or the injured one can be taken to the hospital? Now, these are the stuff of hazard we talk about when we talk about the hazard and effect management process. It's totally different from HAZOP. This one will look at every risk, both process risk and non-process risk. And the beauty of the dummy down HSE case is that there's a standard in the industry called the ISO, I think it's 18776, that gives us a hazard checklist. That hazard checklist gives us checklists for both process and non-process hazard. And if you walk through the checklist, you can start by looking at what is your hazard description. What is the source of the hazard? You list all the threats from the hazard. And believe me, all the threats, 60% of the threat from the hazard and non-process threat. That is why this is a beautiful process to also complement your HAZOP. When you look at the HAZOP focus mostly on process threat, this looks at the process and non-process threat. And you can see that's why we talk about drop object, ship collusion, structural failure. These are failures we don't look at in HAZOP, but the HAZOP is a contribution to the hazard and effect management process. So HAZOP, hazard and effect management process cannot function without HAZOP. So your HAZOP can actually be an input into your HEMP. The moment you look at the top event is not similar for the event in the HAZOP. The consequence is not different from the consequence you will get in HAZOP. So you're going to rank your risk, which we call the residual risk ranking, according to the people, which is a P, the asset, which is the A, the E, and the R. But for the purpose of the hazard and effect management process, create what we call the hazard and effect register, which is the first step for identification of your risk. So once you create the hazard and effect register, you can see that here we have the mitigation systems and we have the preventative systems. These systems are called barriers. So you will hear sometime in the industry, some people call it barriers, some people call it safeguards. They are the same thing. So in this place, the HAZOP will only list things on the PNID, but for the hazard and effect register, we list both things on the PNID and the things that are documented elsewhere. And that's why you can see we have hard barriers and we have soft barriers. The hard barriers can be processed, can be the containment. The soft barriers can be your administrative functions. So we've been able to list the mitigation and the preventative barriers here. And at the end of the day, we ask the question, is the overall hazard controlled? You can see, because we have validated the functionality, the availability of our barriers, we can see it is effective. When you get to your plant today, or when you talk to people in your area, especially whether you're an engineer or a non-engineer, ask them, do you know what your safety critical elements are? Or do you know what are your safety critical equipment? They properly designed? When last were they tested? Can you show me? Show and tell is one of the reasons why our industry can stay safer than yesterday.